Hello and welcome to my FIFA 23 Tottenham Hotspur 22-23 season goalkeeper kit jersey quest. The player we're going to be focusing on is obviously he's got to be a goalie. It's going to be Hugo Lloris from this is obviously it was his last season with Tottenham, and he was in the top 10 in Premier League history for clean sheets. So
A warm
kind of
welcome to
by
you all.
default, he's going to
Without
be
further delay,
the
we are
Premier League
pleased to
era Tottenham
introduce your
Hotspur's
new manager.
goalkeeper with the most clean sheets. So we're gonna use that as an achievement to focus, enable this kit quest to be a thing. And what we're gonna be doing this one, as you're kind of gonna be seeing, we're gonna be setting up the tactical setup and whatnot for for Spurs in 22-23. So linked in the description or in the comment section will be a link to the video that I used myself that I use from a different person on YouTube who kind of does an excellent job of kind of recreating real life tactics in the FIFA games. So obviously for the like 2/3, 3/4 or so of the 22-23 season, Spurs manager was obviously Antonio Conte. So the person has a video of Conte tactics that they created in FIFA 22 when Spurs were taken over by him partway through the season, and he kind of spurred them on to finish in the top four over Arsenal. And the tactics he used in the 2022-2023 season were pretty similar. Obviously, things didn't really work out for Conte, and he got fired, kind of quit in March of that season. So it was a pretty poor season in the recent history for Tottenham. But regardless, we're going to be using tactics from that video to kind of recreate how Conte set up his Spurs team and how they tried to play when they were playing well at the end of the 21-22 season, and kind of recreate that in FIFA. It's also really good because Conte was kind of a defense first, focus on protecting your net and then kind of going up and countering somewhat. It's a very good style. So we're focusing on Hugo Lloris. We want to this kind of be very defensively set up, and so this tactical setup will do a pretty good job of doing that. Kind of noticed at the beginning when like the whole new manager cutscene thingy, what's I had it set up so the manager's name and whatever appearance is supposed to look like Mash Fate, which you've probably seen in the FGO Let's Play. Just for me, it's kind of convenient. Kind of lets me try, at least obviously probably saw not very well, recreate what they would look like in FIFA. And then like because you need a first and last name for the manager name in this, it just allows me to do that without having to actually like dox myself or anything like that. So there you go. That's why it's Mash Kyrielite. It looks like her and whatnot. It's not a huge deal really, it's just like for the name pretty much. And it's like in the future episodes you probably see like the cutscenes and then that's what'll be in it and whatnot. But yeah, so it's tactical setup. It's a 3-4-3 formation. You're probably seeing me as I'm like kind of adjusting the positions and instructions and all that good stuff. But yeah, so it's a 3-4-3 system we're going to be running with 3 center backs, 2 wing backs, which in the game they're going to technically be left and right midfielders, which the person in their video that I'll link kind of explains why they do that. And from my experience kind of testing around with it, it does work as they kind of explained it. So they'll go forward like the wing backs are supposed to, but they'll also still come back and defend and form a back 5. When they got the double pivot at the 2 midfielders, which is going to be Højbjerg and Bentancur, kind of setting up in the midfield with Kane, Son, and Kulusevski, and the front line trying to bang in the goals and set each other up and whatnot to hopefully have a successful season. The goal of this is because this is obviously very different kind of from in the Jersey Quest introduction video. I explained how it kind of works for the NHL games. For this, it's a little different just because there are, 3 up to 4 if you're in Europe, like 4 different trophies, actually 5, 6 if you like, Super Cups and whatnot to win. The goal in this one pretty much is going to be we're going to play and see how many trophies of any type, because obviously you kind of know recent history. Tottenham haven't won a trophy since the late 2000s. Uh, so it's kind of be whatever trophies we can win with Hugo Lloris. Also because he is 33, 34-ish at the start of the 22-23 season. He's there you go, older for FIFA, and they kind of different from NHL where players will kind of be able to maintain their high-ish or overall, or be a middle of the pack overall, and still kind of play into the like late 30s, early 40s. FIFA, they very kind of quickly retire. Like if they're like 34 or 35-ish, their overalls kind of really start to plummet, and they'll retire pretty quickly. So with Hugo Lloris, he's 33, 34. He's an 84 overall to start. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this first season he's like an 80, 81 overall. And then because his contract does expire in the game and also was supposed to be originally in real life at the end of the 23-24 season, it's very possible that he'll, after the first season, the second season stats measures will be that he's retiring at the end of the season. So therefore we only have 2 seasons really, so we're going to try and win as many trophies as we can. Probably going to end up being Carabao Cup, FA Cup. If we're lucky, maybe we'll win the league, likely in the second season. But it's going to try to get some sort of trophy with the Spurs team, with Hugo Lloris in net and captaining the squad. So hopefully it works out. As I've kind of explained earlier, how it is also going to work is this first season, we're going to kind of play the sim/play, so the results try and mimic as closely as possible the IRL results Tottenham had during the 22-23 season. So I'll kind of refresh if you don't remember. If you don't know, Tottenham finished 8th in the Premier League after the end of the 22-23 season. They got bounced out of the Carabao Cup in round 3, which is the first round the Premier League teams typically enter. They got bounced to Forest in the Carabao Cup. And then the FA Cup, they made it to the 5th round and got bounced by what was at that time a championship side, Sheffield United. And then in the Champions League, they finished top of their group, because that was the group stages when they were kind of still playing really well under Conte. Finished top of their group, and then got matched up to AC Milan in the round of 16. And they lost that kind of round, the aggregate score of 1-0. So there will be probably a decent amount of simming in this, because Tottenham drew a lot of matches to weaker opposition. They lost matches, as you can see with the cup competitions. They lost matches to weaker competition, whatnot. So it's going to be a lot of simming this first season, and then playing the matches they did win. So some of the group stuff, the Champions League, the first couple rounds of the FA Cup, the league matches they won and whatnot. Then, as I said, simming the draws and losses. How it will work, let's just say, in this first season, we'll use like the cup competitions as an example. How it'll work if we round through the Carabao Cup, I sim it because they lost, and they're matched up against, let's say Forest again for consistency's sake. They're matched up against Forest, I sim it because they should have beaten Forest. They're a much better side than them in the 22-23 campaign. I sim, they win. And in round 4, they get matched up against, let's just say, like a lower, let's say Brentford. This is Brentford, hypothetically. What I'll do is because it's information easily accessible on the internet, go up, look Tottenham's last 5 results against Brentford. But just for make it easy, I'll include the results from the 23-24 season in real life, just because it's just easier to look 1 through. So then what I'll do is the last 5 results. Let's say it's 2 wins, a loss, 2 draws. What I'll do is I'll go to random.org, randomize the list, put for the wins, so 2 wins, they'd be play. The 2 draws would be reroll, so if it lands on that when I do the randomizer reroll, and then the loss would be simulate the game. So what I'll do is I'll have those in the list randomizer, randomize it, and if it lands on play, I'll play the match. If it lands on sim, I'll sim the match, and then reroll, we just re-roll until you get to one of those other two outcomes. So that's how it'll work for, say, the cup competitions in year one, and then in year two. So in FIFA, it'll be the 23-24 season. I'll do that for every single match. So league, cups, if we make it to Europe, whatever, all those matches, it'll be me kind of doing the randomizer, rolling it up, and seeing what we get. So it should, just because Tottenham, is historically a strong club, but in recent seasons have kind of flippy, like have been meh with some of the results and losing, getting upset by weaker teams. It should end up with me playing and winning games Tottenham should win, and then potentially playing games they would typically kind of do meh or lose based on like a past result, just like the kind of that once in every couple of years when they say they beat Arsenal and won the North London derbies. So the kind of things like that. It'll kind of make it a little bit more realistic towards how they'll finish up, and it should hopefully by the end of it end up resulting in us winning a trophy for Spurs and with Hugh as captain and whatnot. In terms of things, the rest of this video I'll probably get cut out soon, and I'll cut back in. It'll be me going over the kind of objective, looking at quickly at the objectives that the board sets you in the game, kind of seeing what they are and saying how I'm going to kind of deal with those. Then after that, it's going to be what's going to be the other kind of bigger section of the video is me kind of going through the Tottenham's admittedly bloated squad with almost 40 players in it, and kind of briefly kind of touching on how I'm going to do the development things for different types of players to try and help them grow into what I want, so they kind of fit the Conte tactics, as well as kind of talking who's going to be in the starting 11, who's going to be a backup, who's going to be kind of on loan and what, so not so my transfer strategy for this to try and build the best possible teams, who's going to be going and whatnot, how the transfer stuff will kind of I'll work it more generally, like cut back in. That'll be what it is. Also, if you kind of can't tell, this is kind of just me talking after I kind of went through and played and recorded this early footage for this. So me talking about the players that might not line up directly with kind of as I'm talking, I might go a little slower, faster, and players kind of just flit in the screen, but I'll kind of have a list up and kind of go through them. So I kind of see you back in a second, or there's a couple minutes realistically. Alright, I'm back. As I kind of said earlier, this is going to be me quickly going through the board objectives for this career mode save. So as you kind of see, there's 5 different, if you don't know, right, there's 5 different types. There's youth development, brand exposure, financial, domestic, and continental success. So kind of with like these simming games and whatnot, not playing every game, some of these, it's going to be somewhat more difficult to do some, and others we'll kind of quickly just go over them, see how realistic I think they are to complete and whatnot, and how I'm kind of going to go about completing them. Kind of give you guys a little insight into that. So the first, youth development, it's a medium priority, so it's kind of nice if you do it. Not going to hurt your manager rating too badly if you don't complete it. So the short term one is assign 4 players to the youth academy, assigned to basically each kind of general area position: a goalkeeper, a defender, a midfielder, and a forward. So that one's easy enough to complete. Just gotta, as you kind of probably saw a little bit earlier in the video, might be a little bit more after this, just because of timing and whatnot. I sent like the default scout they give you, and I sent them to like France to look for goalkeepers for a couple of months. So I'll pretty much be just doing that. Send the scout out to an area, so I kind of look for players that are goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards. I should be able to complete that with not too many problems. The long-term one where it says, sign a youth player to the senior team and play them matches, I'm just gonna ignore that. In this, the youth players stuff, like it's all computer-generated crap, so I don't really like care too much about it. So I never really play or focus too much on kind of like these like saying I'm really strong and youth academy, because if you do it right, you can get like really OP with it and just basically have an entire team of players who are like 95 or 90 potential or whatever in like every position and whatnot. So I kind of just ignore these ones where it's like you have to have youth players play for the team for a certain amount of matches. I kind of just ignore those ones. For the brand exposure, it's, hold on a second. The brand exposure, it's to win 20 times in the league. So as I said, Tottenham during the 22-23 campaign finished 8th in the Premier League. So getting 20 wins may not happen. Hopefully it should, just because some of the games they lost that season or drew, like to the 3-3 at Southampton and whatnot, who got relegated. Hopefully the sim engine won't end up simming those games, because Tottenham is just should be a better team, and I'll have them set up and I'll have better players in than what they have now with the transfer windows and whatnot. Hopefully we get to 20 elite wins. If we don't, not a huge deal. Sign one veteran player. That I should complete. The problem with that sometimes is these objectives with FIFA are very, very finicky. So I'll try and complete it. I should complete it in terms of when I talk about transfer strategy after I go through the squad. I should be able to complete that one. Financial, financial objective here is to increase the club worth by 25%. That shouldn't really be a huge problem. One, because it's a medium priority. Two, because advancing into the Champions League and whatnot, we should be able to complete that. Domestic success, it's to finish in a top 4, basically. That shouldn't be a huge problem, even though Spurs did finish 8th IRL, because, as I said, with the 20 wins, we should pick up wins where they didn't in real life, and should, just because of that and whatnot, we should finish top 4. FA Cup, win the cup. That one's going to be a little hit or miss, just because, as I said earlier, Tottenham went out in real life in the FA Cup in the 5th round. So if we get in the 5th round and later on, if we get matched up against like one of the top Premier League sides that Tottenham doesn't have a good record against, they'll probably sim. They're probably going to lose. They'll be out of the FA Cup, but it is what it is. The continental success is to make the semi-finals of the Champions League. Another one where it's kind of going to be hit or miss, just because they got bounced in the round of 16. So, and that it's also a lot harder because Tottenham's most of their European success time has been in the kind of more modern era. There are teams they haven't really played a ton against or haven't done well against when they have played them in Europe. So that is probably going to be another tricky one. But now, probably a little slow. So as the squad I'm probably going through it now. It's probably already been happening, but I'll kind of just quickly kind of go through the whole squad and kind of explain who I'm going to keep, who's going to probably get transferred out and whatnot, and my kind of general transfer strategy when I play these games. So, looking at the squad, first up, it's Hugo Lloris. As I kind of said, this is the jersey quest is centering around Hugo Lloris, so he's obviously going to be staying at the club and whatnot. Oh, quickly, just before I saw it, I was kind of scrolling down quickly, look at Pedro Porro. What I did is it's kind of whatever. It's just an offline loan, so it's whatever. I kind of just did it because Spurs ended up at the end of the 22-23 season taking out the options to buy both Pedro Porro and Dan Kulusevski. In the game, their like buy clauses are like way are not like accurate at all, really, like in terms of the value. So I just like kind of manually through the editing the rosters kind of transferred them to Spurs just to make things easy because these are players that end up staying at Spurs and whatnot after their loans from Sporting and Juventus. So kind of going back to it, as I was saying, the squad, Hugo Lloris, he's the focus of this jersey quest. He's going to be our starting goalkeeper. He's not going anywhere. And all the goalkeepers are going to be on the sweeper keeper. Fraser Foster, he's contract's expiring in 2 years or less, so kind of my transfer strategy in terms of outgoings is, which is kind of how clubs do it IRL, is if they're 2 years left of their contract or 1 year, that's when they're kind of either going to be extended, sold, and whatnot. So 2 years left, I'll put them, if I'm going to transfer, put them on the transfer block, or if they're 1 year left as well. But besides the ones that are 1 year left here, it shouldn't really happen too much in the future. But yeah, so Fraser Foster, I'm not really sure what to do with him just because his contract is expiring in 2 years, but Spurs kind of have the whole problem with not having a ton of homegrown players, so he's homegrown. Might have to keep him. We'll see what it is. After that, it's Brandon Austin and Alfie Whiteman. They're kind of in the same boat where their potentials are like god awful, but because they are both homegrown, and because I kind of touched on this briefly to kind of make this somewhat realistic, I'm going to try and keep to the real life rules about homegrown players in that the Premier League has set up and the Champions League has set up. So Premier League, that's just 8 homegrown players. In general, Champions League gets a little more strict where it has 4 of them have to be trained by the club, so by Tottenham, and the other 4 could just be homegrown in the more general sense. So because Whiteman and Alfie Whiteman and Brandon Austin are both homegrown and club trained, they're probably going to end up sticking around just in the squad and potentially becoming one of them will become Hugo's backup if I sell Fraser Foster, just because they kind of fill those requirements. There aren't too many players who do, so they'll kind of just be sticking around. Moving on to the left back / wing backs, Ivan Perisic, his contract is expiring in 2 years, and he's one that's kind of, if I keep him, next year his contract's down to 1 year. He's going to, pretty much because of how the overalls work, his overall's going to plummet by the end of the season. He's going to want to retire at the end of the next year. So I'll probably sell him and replace him with someone. Ryan Sessegnon, in real life, his Tottenham career has been kind of a disaster because of injuries, but in the game, he's not really as injury prone because injuries certainly happen a ton. So I'll probably be keeping him because he's homegrown and as a backup. I might sell him if I kind of feel like it. We'll see. More likely than not, he'll end up being kept. Sergio Reguilon, who is currently on loan during the 22-23 season at Atletico, he'll probably end up getting sold just because he's kind of going to end up being a backup. And that we already have Sessegnon for that role, so he's not homegrown. His Spurs career has kind of been an absolute mess, so he'll be gone. Cudi Romero, he's kind of the rock of the Tottenham bat line. During this period, he was like the really like high quality center back they had in the 2022-23 season, so he's staying no matter what. Eric Dyer, he's an interesting one just because I do personally, Eric Dyer, I like him a lot, even though his kind of end of his Spurs career wasn't great. He's doing great at Bayern Munich right now in real life. But the problem is he is from England, but because he went to the Sporting Academy as a kid, he's not going to count as homegrown, so I might end up moving him on and bringing in someone who's homegrown just to kind of potentially allow me to get rid of Austin and Whiteman, things like that, to kind of trim down the squad size. Got to have somewhat better players in there, so I might move him on, I might not. Clement Longley, he's on loan from Barcelona. He's just gonna, I'll play him enough so that Barcelona doesn't like take him back in January. Because if you don't play him a lot, the club that you're loaning them from will get all upset and kind of terminate the loan. I'll keep him for the rest of the season, and then once the loan expires, he'll be gone. I'll probably, after the January transfer window, kind of that period in between then and the end of the season, if we have spare money, I'll probably bring someone in then that who will end up coming in at the start of the 23-24 season, or just bring someone in during the summer transfer window at the start of the 23-24 season to replace him as our starting left center back. Joe Rodon, he's on loan at Rennes in France. He's another one who's kind of like a lot of these players, unfortunately, whose Spurs careers haven't really materialized into much, but he does count as homegrown. His potential, I think, is like 79 or 80 or so, so I might end up just keeping him as our backup left center back because he's homegrown. Ben Davis, another player I personally like, but he's kind of not really it in terms of being a really solid Premier League center back anymore, so he'll probably, not this season, but next season, end up being sold, and Joe Rodon will kind of take his place, as I said, as backup left center back. Davinson Sanchez, he's one that Spurs end up selling. I'll probably end up selling him too. His Spurs career, other one, Spurs career's been a flop. Find someone better to be a backup. Keep Lyons Foster, just he's gone. I don't know why he's like on the squad in the game. So he's just gonna be, his contract expires. If it expires, it expires. If I can transfer him out for like 400 grand, I will. Pedro Porro, he's, as I kind of messed around with the rosters to make sure he's just here permanently, he's gonna be our starting right wing back. He's fantastic. I love him. He'll be our starting right wing back for pretty much the entire time. Jed Spence, he's one that, another one whose Spurs career is kind of not really turned into much because of seemingly attitude problems. Doesn't really exist in the game, but I'll probably end up kind of just loading him out a bunch or keeping him as our backup because he is a homegrown player. So it's kind of up in the air, also because his contract doesn't expire for a while in the game, so I kind of have time to figure out what I want to do with him. After that, it's Emerson Royale, who, I love Emerson. He's a great guy, but in this system, he probably will technically fit better because he's a more defensive-minded player, and we're playing a somewhat more defensive system with the Conte system. But I'll probably end up moving him out because he is a foreign player. In terms of that like balance, I'm keeping either Spence or Tanganga, as you see below, or kind of selling all three of these backup options to just bringing in like one guy who's homegrown, or maybe even just a foreign player who's just a better quality one, fits better with the right mid position of the game we're kind of setting it up as in game. In terms of midfielders, we have Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who in real life is going to probably be moved from Spurs in this kind of upcoming transfer window after the 23-24 season. In game, he's, especially in FIFA 23, he's really good, in my opinion, in terms in the game. I like Højbjerg a lot, so he's going to probably end up staying and being one of our starters in the double pivot. Because he's he's good, he works hard, he doesn't really miss a match IRL, and in game he's good, so I'll probably end up keeping him as our, probably on the right hand side, maybe the left hand side, kind of depending on how I feel, kind of alternate back and forth of the double pivot in center midfield. After Højbjerg, here is, I'm pretty sure it's, because I'm doing this afterwards, kind of trying to like watch the video I have, kind of match it up. But after him, I'm pretty sure is Oliver Skip. He's another one where in game his potential is pretty good. IRL, his Spurs career kind of hasn't really done much, unfortunately. But because he's Harvey White is actually who's next technically, but he's one I'll probably, once his loan expires, kind of sell on. His potential sucks. Oliver Skip, his potential in game is good, and because he's a club trained player for that kind of quota, He's going to stay and probably be our backup to Højbjerg. Yves Bissouma, I like a lot, but his IRL form has kind of dipped recently, and in game, he's going to want a lot of playing time because his role is important, and he's not really going to be able to get it. So he'll probably end up being in this first season backup to our other starter in the double pivot, but he'll probably end up getting moved on, as much as I like him, for someone who's going to probably be more willing to be a backup, or someone you kind of see below. Tanguy and Ndombele, absolute bust. He's going to be sold as soon as possible. Or I honestly, just because this is the game, it's not real life, his potential's decent. Because as you can see, he kind of fits, his position is kind of all three areas of the center of the park. I might keep him kind of just like last, if there's injuries or something, can be thrown into the lineup, but probably not. After him is Harry Winks, whose potential and overall kind of suck. But again, because he's a club-trained player, he'll probably kind of, once I move Basuma on, and he'll kind of staying after his loan expires to Sampdoria, he'll be our other backup in the double pivot with Oliver Skip. Jamie Bowden, he's, like, his contract's expiring, his potential sucks. He'll be sold because as his potential sucks and whatnot, and I don't think he ever made a senior appearance for Spurs. He might have made like one or two cameo appearances, which is why he's like in the squad in the game, but he'll be gone. Pap Sarr, who's kind of been like a somewhat breakout player for the Spurs in real life in the 23-24 season. He's one who I might end up keeping. I'll probably end up keeping in the long run as a backup in the double pivot, but in this first season, I'll probably send him out on loan, so just isn't going to be a lot of playing time available for him. Rodrigo Bentancur, he's going to be, for now, the other kind of starter in the double pivot with Højbjerg, but I'm probably going to end up moving him on to someone who's actually a defensive midfielder, just to kind of have it fit better with the role and want in terms of positionally. But I do really like Bentancur a lot, but he'll be here this first season, but we'll probably end up getting moved on for who knows. We'll see. But Alfie Devine, very good prospect for Spurs. He'll be sent out on loan or have the contract renewed and whatnot because his potential is really good. So we'll kind of keep him around, hope his potential grows, and he kind of become one of the club-trained players. So you can get rid of someone like a Winks or Brandon Austin or a Whiteman and replace it with him because he can be our backup on the wings because we're kind of playing them as left and right attacking midfielders. So he'll go out on loan for a couple seasons, potential grow and whatnot. Giovanni Lo Celso, I like him a lot. He's a really talented player. In real life, just gets injured a ton. So his Spurs career has kind of been a mess. But he's on loan this first season. Then he'll have 2 years left in his contract. I'll probably end up selling him just because there isn't really the attacking midfielder isn't really a thing in terms of traditionally in this system. It's just wings. So there's gonna be a lot of competition for spots, and he probably just won't get the playing time his like character wants because of him being an important role. Sonny, he's on the faces of this club. He'll be staying until he retires, pretty much. Starting on the left wing, technically, but in the formation, it's left attacking midfielder. But yeah, he'll be starting in that position. He's really high overall. He's really good in the game. He'll be staying. Brian Hill, the Spanish Beetle, his Spurs career, another one. Pretty common theme you're kind of seeing here. An absolute flop. But in game, his potential is pretty high. So he'll probably end up being Son's backup in game and potentially kind of becoming the starter as Son's overall drops. Lucas Moura, his contract's expiring. So I'm not really sure. I might end up selling him. I might just keep him or extend him for like a year or two and keep him for the season and then replace him. But it kind of depends what I want to do. And then right wing, we have Dejan Kulusevski. He's going to be the starting right wing. He's been kind of poor IRL, but I really like him. And he's going to fit kind of better in this Conte system that we're kind of running in game. So he'll be a really good fit for that. So he's going to be our starting right wing. Then we have Charlison. This season, 2022-2023 IRL was an absolute flop for him. But I really like Richarlison a lot. He's one of my kind of current favorite players in the Spurs squad. He's going to be Harry Kane's backup. Danjuma, his loan to Spurs was kind of a disaster. We'll probably plan to play him as backup left wing in this first season, and then his loan will expire, and then Brian Hill will come back and he'll kind of replace him there. Harry Kane, one of Spurs' greatest ever players, arguably the best ever player. He's going to be a starting striker week in, week out. And the last two players in the squad are Troy Parrott and Dane Scarlett. They're kind of just because we have Richarlison already. They're kind of end up probably being loaned out a little bit until they hit like 22 years of age and then sold. And that's it for the squad. So that's kind of like me going through the squad, who's going to stay, who's going to go. And there's a word with that, you kind of see who I'll probably be transferring out. We're going to have to replace with players. So in terms of my transfer in strategy, to kind of keep it realistic, what we're kind of going to be doing is somewhat realistic and somewhat kind of just for the theme here, because we're going Hugo Lloris is our player focus. A lot of our players, that if we can bring in players who count as like foreign and homegrown kind of quotas, a lot of them are going to be from France, probably from the French national team and whatnot, because Hugo Lloris was for a long time the captain of the French national team, won a World Cup with them, won a Nations League with them, took them to the World Cup final during this season IRL. So he'll be so we'll bring a lot of French players from the French national team, kind of as starters or backups and whatnot if we can. And then another thing, or players who play for teams in the French league, Ligue 1. And the other kind of way we're going to do it, which is kind of very Daniel Levy, Spurs, IRL kind of esque, is whatever teams go down at the end of this first season or any other season, we'll kind of see who they have on their squad. If there's any like good players that can fit in place, open kind of areas of need in the squad, we'll kind of snag them up for. It's not going to be cheap because the game doesn't really care about like, teams going down and whatnot affecting their value. We'll kind of grab those players like kind of Spurs did to IRL with James Maddison from Leicester and whatnot. So and we're kind of targeting Gibbs White and other players potentially in this IRL transfer window that's coming up. So that's kind of how our transfer strategy is going to be. And that's kind of, as you kind of see at the end here, the budget we have is 104 million pounds, so we can probably bring in a couple of decent players, especially with kind of funds from any players we sell as well. So we should be able to kind of, biggest areas of focus are going to be center backs because it's a very defensive system. We're going to want our defense to be very strong, and potentially kind of backups for players that we need backups for, and potentially replacing players with players who better fit kind of the theme we're going for in the style. But that's it. Kind of this probably isn't going to really overlap exactly kind of with like as I go through the squad, the video footage you guys are seeing. But so wherever this is kind of is in terms of that, I'll probably a lot of the talk might be before then. Some of it might be like during or after. But thank you guys for watching. And how this is kind of going to work is every kind of couple months in game, I'll probably do like an update of kind of where. Also, I might do just two updates. Like at the start of the first of the season, we'll do one kind of right before the January transfer window, or kind of see where we're at. And I'll kind of talk about what I'm going to be doing in the January transfer window. Then I'll do the January transfer window at the end of the season. I'll have an end of season update where I'll kind of discuss how things went in terms of the end of the season. They're probably in those videos will probably be like highlights if like say there's a penalty in one of the games I play and Hugo saves it and whatnot, things like that. But thank you guys for watching and look out for more of these videos for the series in the future.